So thank you everybody for coming to this meeting of the steering committee for the Northern Solano Democratic Club. I will briefly show our agenda. And as you can see, we will be just hearing from Dr. Nicola Parr, who is an applicant for the appointment of Superintendent of Schools for Solano County. So without
Yes.
further ado, let's go ahead and spotlight you and give you 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Okay. Wow. I'm so happy to have been given this opportunity to speak to everyone this evening. I am Dr. Nikki Parr, and I am running for Solano County Superintendent of Schools. I am also applying for the position that will be vacated starting September 1st as our current superintendent is retiring. I am from Solano County, grew up here in Solano County, and have been an educator for over 25 years. I believe I'm going into my 26th year in education. My mother was a teacher. She retired from the Fairfield Sassoon Unified School District. And my dad is a retired Chief Master Sergeant with the Air Force and was stationed for the majority of my life at Travis Air Force Base. So I grew up around educators and have always known that I wanted to be an educator. I started off as a special education teacher and taught for a number of years. Got the tap on the shoulder that I was who our organization was looking for leadership. And I entered into a leadership role when I was 28 years old. I was pretty young and went on to get advanced degrees to help bolster my leadership skills. It was wonderful being able to teach students, but I quickly realized that I needed some different skills in order to manage adults. So I went back and received a postmaster's professional degree in educational leadership and management and a doctoral degree. And was a leader in a local school district, Vacaville Unified, for 8 years. And I have been the senior director with Solano County Office of Education um, for the past 11 years. I oversee school-based mental health and wellness services. One of the areas of focus for me over the years has been to look at how we can better systematize our response to students' needs and really differentiate based on those students' needs. And so one of the things that I realized quickly is that in Solano County, we don't receive a lot of philanthropic funding. We don't have large organizations that pour money into our educational system like some of the other Bay Area counties do. And so one of the things that I did was took an active role in bringing resources here to Solano County. So I've brought in over $30 million in grant funds, federal grants, state, local, many of them highly competitive. And all of those grants are designed to address the needs of students and our community. We know that when students come into school with all of the things that they need, housing, basic needs are being met, that they can learn more efficiently. And it makes for a better experience for both the teacher, the school community, and the student. And so that's what I have dedicated my career to do, utilizing some of the grant funds to do very innovative programs such as wellness centers. We've opened over 50 wellness centers in Solano County because of this funding and partnerships with our county behavioral health department and other community partners. We've also been able to stand up a very robust and effective school-based mobile crisis program. So it's my clinical team that responds to young people when they're in crisis at school versus relying solely on our school resource officers. And I want to do more of that as county superintendent. I want to be able to bring in additional resources to collaborate with the community. All of the programs that were developed were based on community input and community speaking up about what the needs are, and then designing programs around that. So I look forward to the interview that will take place on Wednesday, July 23rd at 4 p.m. at the Solano County Office of Education. We will know that evening who our superintendent will be, who will be appointed for the remainder of this um, term. And I'm also running. I have formed a committee and will be running for the 2027 seat that would start January 1st of 2027. So I look forward to any questions that I can answer for you.
Excellent. And you have excellent timing. Okay, so let me just go ahead and admit this person. So a couple questions. Let's start with mental health. Um, well, or I should say behavioral health to be clear.
Mhm.
Because one of the biggest things that you do see within schools is that children who have behavioral problems, whether or not they have academic problems, are often the ones who get recommended for special education or any sort of intervention, whether or not they need special education. Whereas students who have academic delays but no behavioral problems often don't get that same support.
Mhm.
What would you like to see to reverse that trend?
Mm. First and foremost, continuing to destigmatize mental health, making sure that every community member knows that one, and depending on what study you read, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 individuals will have a mental health, behavioral health challenge in their lifetime. And we also know that we are in the midst of a mental health crisis with our youth and have been trending in that direction for a number of years. That particular challenge has grown as a result of the pandemic. And we have all of the data to prove that we're not trending in the right direction. The key element is early identification. So, one of the things that I would like to see is expanding on one of the programs that I started a number of years ago around universal mental health screening. We have the tools, we've done some preliminary work around identifying the different tools and which tools are best at what age and what community. But just like we assess young people for their math to see if they're learning and if there's any deficits in math or reading, we need to do the same thing with behavioral health. And there are some quick and inexpensive screeners that can be used to identify young people who may have a mental health concern where we can do further assessments. And so that's one of the things that I would want to do. Also, continuing to train educators. So I'm an educator. I'm not a clinician, don't have a clinical background, but I've spent the majority of my career working with young people and families where there's a behavioral health challenge. And um, we need to help support families to be able to communicate to the schools what the challenges are, but we also need educators to be able to identify young people that may be at risk so that we are intervening based on um, solid information about what the needs are and not our own biases. Sometimes when we see behaviors as an educator, we're not necessarily trained to look beyond the behavior to try to identify what the function of that particular behavior is. And that's the thing that we need to get teachers, paraprofessionals, all adults on campus ready and knowledgeable about what normal adolescent growth and development looks like and when there may be a concern. So that way we're all as an ecosystem, as a whole ecosystem around that young person, supporting them and getting them to supports early rather than after there has been a lot of behavioral concerns on the campus. And I would really want to see some more structured support around enhancing and expanding positive behavioral interventions and supports, because that is the system that has over 30 years of research. It's been funded by the U.S. Department of Education for over 30 years across multiple presidents and different administrations. And if we implement this with fidelity, we will see lower suspension rates. There's some really great research around it lowering the percentage of students who are referred for special education, which then frees up resources for those students who really need the special education services. And it is the system that will help support creating a positive school climate for all that is accepting of all students.
What do you think are the biggest gaps in services for SCO?
Well, the ongoing funding,
Hmm.
the constant changes to legislative regulations, federal regulations right now. One of the things that we're grappling with, I was able to secure two grants, one with the U.S. Department of Education and one with SAMHSA, over four to $5 million for each one. And one of the grants we received a cancellation for. And this particular grant is supports us as as a county keeping our residents who are clinical interns here in Solano County, because what we have are a lot of individuals that live here. They go to school at Sac State or San Jose, they get their internship there, they build relationships, they get picked up and hired in those cities where they are having their internship. We want to provide opportunities for our people to work here, to serve their community, and for us to fill some of the vacancies that we currently have. Um, so I would say funding being a current concern, right?
Yeah, that, yeah.
Ever, every time you turn the news on, it's like, okay, what? And then we're responding to all these different things. And so it distracts us from some of the other things that we could be doing. We're just responding to the um, constant changes, right? You think you're moving in one direction and you are following the guidelines, and then those guidelines change midstream. So that's one of the challenges. Also, filling positions with qualified, highly qualified individuals. One of the things that the county does is provides leadership, collaboration, and support to our district partners. And so we need to make sure that we have staff that can step in and support the districts through whatever the challenges, whether it's increasing or academic programs or improving behavioral health supports, wellness supports, and a variety of other areas that a district may need support. So making sure that we have the right people and keeping positions filled as well.
Yeah. I will say that early education is one of the poorest paid uh, areas that basically, unless you have somebody who's supporting you, it is not actually a living wage job.
Absolutely, absolutely, because they're competing with fast food, right?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, they are, and actually losing to fast food. Uh,
hmm hmm
so, okay. Speaking of which, what is the budget going to look like next year?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I know that the governor's budget was released, and there are going to be some potential cuts. Um, we're also so the thing that I'm really concerned about is looking at what's going to happen with title money,
Hmm.
federal money, because irregardless of what's in our budget, if our budget is built on the belief that we're going to have these federal funds and then those federal funds are cut, there's going to have to be an adjustment made to our state budget. So I'm looking at the state budget and thinking, okay, and what's going to be happening with Title I funds and Title II and Title III and IV. There was recently a question about whether or not there would be significant cuts to that to those federal funds. And so really keeping an eye out on that. And then also looking at other ways to um, other resources that are available, really being clear and laser light focused on the areas that we need to focus on because we can't necessarily do everything well. We don't have the funding to necessarily do everything. And so, what are the things that we really need to focus on and make sure? And as a county office, how can we best support the districts in that work? What are the things that we can do to supplement, to enhance what the districts are doing?
So that actually runs right into my next question. So special education seems to be being put back into the districts in terms of especially the specialty things. So I'm thinking of H. Glenn Richardson, which you are very well aware of. Irene Larson in Vacaville no longer does pre-K. Basically, all of those students are now in the Vacaville if they live in the Vacaville district. But you also have other districts like Travis, Benicia, um, that are small and do not have those programs. So you need you either need to get special dispensation to get into those district programs, um, or there is no program for you. Whereas that used to be the purview of the county. And so, how do you think about those being within district versus back with the county?
Well, what I know is that a county office of education doesn't have a mandate to provide special education services, right? There's certain things that we are mandated to do as a county office, and there are many county offices that don't provide any special education services. But to your point, we have in Solano County always been a really strong partner with the districts and led a lot of the programs for students, especially those with moderate to severe needs. Um, and what we need to do is make sure that we're communicating and getting the feedback from the parents and the families, as well as the districts. I believe that in this county, we have all of the knowledge and everything that we need to be able to effectively support our students with IEPs, our students with special needs. We're just not always able or have not always necessarily been as successful coordinating all of that, making sure that we're asking parents what are the needs because there's going to be blind spots. There's no one entity. As a superintendent, you can't see everything. So you do have to reach out to the community. You do have to reach out to your district partners and be in spaces where you're hearing directly from those communities about what the needs are. Ultimately, the districts have the ability to continue partnerships with the county, to decide to take on programs themselves. So, for instance, the H. Glenn um, program, and I had the ability to go visit that campus a few months ago and loved going there because that was my elementary school growing up. So I got a chance to go back to my old neighborhood. But when the first concept was a partnership between the SELPA, between the County Office of Education, which are two separate entities, and the district, Fairfield Sassoon, partnered to open that particular program. And then a few years into the program, Fairfield Sassoon decided that no, we're going to take this on ourselves. And so as a partner in this work, there's ebbs and flows and times when a district really needs to rely heavily on the county and needs that support, especially like what you were saying with the smaller districts. And then there's times when it's better for a district to take on a program and have full control over that program themselves. And so that's some history around H. Glenn. And I think every program is like that. There are going to be times when it makes sense for the county office to lead, and then there's other times when it makes sense for the county office to walk alongside the districts and provide support. So my focus would be making sure I'm in a space and all the spaces where I can hear directly from the community about what the needs are, and then work with the district on determining what role SCO would play in that service delivery.
Okay. It does seem, though, that especially when you leave the larger districts to basically be responsible for that, the smaller districts, quite frankly, don't have the resources, don't have the need. They maybe have two, three students that need this select type of service. So creating a whole program for two to three students is just not feasible. Um, so I think at a bare minimum, coordinating those services and making sure that the smaller districts have access to them would be helpful. Um, so speaking of managerial experience, you would be the head of a large workforce. What cultural changes within that workforce would you like to see?
Cultural changes. Hmm. Good
Like work
question.
culture?
Um, well, I can speak to the work culture that I believe, based on my experience and based on what I've seen, um, works best and creates an atmosphere where individuals are encouraged to grow and to challenge themselves. And what I would say is, I would want to continue some of the great work that the Solano County Office of Education has done to build a workforce that is able to be nimble and be able to respond quickly to the needs in the community. So, as we were talking before about different changes to legislation, different changes to specific requirements, also research. Many times there's additional research that comes out that we need to make sure that we have individuals, leaders that are able to understand all of the nuances around the legislative updates, um, who understand and are connected to local, regional, state, federal um, communities of practice so that we can bring those resources back to Solano County. And that takes an organization providing opportunities for growth and advancement. I want to see programs where we are pouring into our paraprofessionals and encouraging them, those individuals who live here, because many of our paras live in the community. We need to be helping them to get through a teaching program, right? We have a massive teacher shortage. What are we doing right now? What programs do we have? What grants are we going after to help support that? We've had some in the past, and I one of the best things that I was able to see was an individual when I was at the Fairfield High graduation ceremony last month. I saw an individual who had been a paraprofessional, and there was a program that if you had a certain number of college credits, it would pay for you to finish and get your credential. And that was an individual that I had coached and supported, and as well as his supervisor. And so it was so nice to see him there with his students because he finished and then he immediately started working for the Solano County Office of Education. And so I want to see more of those programs. I also recall when I was in school getting my license in Virginia to teach and to become an administrator. There were programs where, you know, you would be able to get a portion or all of your fees paid. I mean, it's $20,000 for um, credential programs, and college costs are enormous. And when we talk about the limited funding that the pay for our paraprofessionals and some of our other classified staff is fairly low. When you were talking about a livable wage, especially in California, the costs here are enormous. I would be looking for opportunities to support and uplift those individuals who are already working with young people and giving them these opportunities for advancement. And that's what I want to see. Grow your own programs, train your own individuals. And it would require a spirit of innovation and being willing to pilot some programs. And some of them may be a success and some of them may not, but utilizing individuals on the team who are researchers who can actually create um, systems so that we can track whether or not a project is actually coming to fruition and reaching the goals that we are seeking to reach, and not just continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again. So I would want to see individuals who are in an atmosphere continue to expand on the atmosphere that we have of innovation and being open and feeling comfortable bringing forth ideas about how we can improve the organization. And I
Excellent.
and that takes time to cultivate, like to
It
really
does.
to make sure that individuals know it's okay to say that something that we're doing is not working well, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to just hear all the things that are great and the rainbows and the birds are singing. We want to know, and I would want to know, what are the things that are not going well that we need to tackle as a team, as a community, for the betterment of our young people and their educational experience.
Just speaking of paraeducators, paraprofessionals, using that as an entry level job would be amazing. Recruiting at a high school for that would be amazing. Solano County or Solano Community College, you get free credits if you go through a program there. Uh, I have been on this little bully pulpit for a while that your best special educators are going to have already been paraprofessionals. That being said, them having some ABA training would also be fantastic. Uh, um, so, if elected, will you pledge to serve the full 4-year term and not quit ahead of time to rig the selection of your successor?
Absolutely. I have at least 10 years left before I could even think about retiring. I've been at the Solano County Office of Education for 11 years. I love that organization. I want to see that organization grow, and we have to grow through change because our community, our society is changing, and we have to absolutely be um, ready to do the work that we are called to do in support of our districts and in support of our communities. So I will absolutely serve the 4-year term and don't have any plans to go anywhere. I have 3 teenage sons, two that are still in K-12 education here. My youngest is starting in high school. So that at least 4 years until he goes off to college. But I see myself retiring from the Solano County Office of Education. And I understand what you're saying about, and I'm taking note of the concern around taking a position, and especially of this magnitude, and then leaving before the term is over. So I don't have any plans to do that and plan to stay the entire 4 years.
There just seems to be a trend going on this year in county offices. Um, so going to a less desirable topic. So there have been abuses at county schools in the past. What guardrails would you like to see in place to make sure that is not allowed to happen again?
Hmm. Education,
Hmm.
transparency,
Hmm.
um, systems that are clear in terms of communication and expectations. So, one of the things that a leader needs to be is present. So, what I would plan to do is to be not just out at working with our districts, but also our own county schools. We have juvenile court and community schools, special education programs, and schools that are run by SCO, and being present there and setting the expectation with the leaders to be present and involved and to as I said, set up communication systems so that if there is abuse, it is reported um, right away, and holding people accountable, holding everyone accountable when a young person is harmed, whether it's physically or emotionally. And then really the training and the coaching of staff. One of the jobs that I had in a previous role was reviewing all of the community complaints. And that was eye-opening for me because several of the complaints that I read were really good individuals, had been solid employees in the past who were stressed out and did something that they should not have done. And I want to do as much prevention work as possible around that. So a lot of the work that I'm doing now is around staff wellness. Um, it Having been a teacher in a school with students who at that time were identified as emotionally disturbed, who could become physical with you, right? I've had to be in restraints. I've been spit on, chairs thrown at me, been in prone restraints before because of safety concerns with the student. And that wears on you, it wears on your body, it wears on your spirit. And so one of the things that I've done is worked with Kaiser Permanente, North Bay Schools Insurance, in creating wellness events for educational staff where we have them in learning yoga. Have you ever done yoga before? Okay, great. If not, then let's teach you some yoga. Let's teach you some breathing techniques. How do you calm yourself down so that you're not reacting out of anger or frustration? Creating systems where when you are working with young people that have challenging behaviors, that there are models where that you can tap out because sometimes you need to tap out. And when I worked with the students that I worked with, anyone could tap you out. So a paraprofessional could tap out a manager and say, there was a little saying that we had, but that let you know, okay, I'm getting heated. I need to go and take a walk, or I need to go and do something. And there was no shame because we're human beings. And like I said, really empowering those classified staff to say, you are empowered and you are expected to give feedback to your managers about their behavior, their actions, and it needs to be a conversation and without fear of a retaliation. That's hard. That's a lot of hard work to really train individuals and get them comfortable to be able to speak out when they are seeing and hearing things that are not up to the standard. And so that's how I would handle that. And then be very swift with investigations. So making sure that whoever is investigating knows what they're doing, that they've been trained, that if there is the need to have an outside individual come and lead the investigation, that that is done, and that there is a sense of transparency across the board with everyone. And, keeping in mind that there's certain things that we have to be very careful about sharing because of student confidentiality. But in general, transparency and making sure that if we've identified a problematic staff person, that we are working diligently to address them and move them out of the organization.
I will say one of the, I wouldn't say the biggest because, we always we have a lot of complaints among special need parents. But one of the biggest things that I do hear about a lot is that they feel that the schools and the administration are more worried about classified staff not talking to parents so that parents don't know what's going on, as opposed to going for transparency and, quite frankly, collaboration. So what what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that whatever messaging and whatever information, it really should be that it is coming from the school community with the classified staff that knows the student or was a witness to the situation, working directly with the student is a part of that school community and the parent. So I think it can be problematic if parents are hearing different information from different people. But that goes back to the empowering staff to be able to ask questions and challenge certain established norms.
Yep.
And leaders that are confident with their own leadership skills to be able to say, you know what, there might be a better way to do this. Let's thank you for this information. Really thanking individuals for their feedback. But I would want to see that everyone is providing parents um, clear communication, even if it's this is the way that I see it and this is the way that this individual sees it, but that it's coming to the parent in a clear and direct way. It's difficult enough as a parent navigating these systems. I'm in the system and I've had difficulties navigating the system.
Mhm.
So we can't be in a situation where parents are hearing multiple things and there's multiple channels of information. We shouldn't have to have a bat channel to a parent. We should be able to all come together as a school community and then communicate whatever the issue that and come together to resolve that challenge so we can move forward on behalf of the student.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about regular communication as well. I mean, I've had actually a lovely para who told me that my daughter was actually friends with another girl in class and how she really wanted us to like arrange a play date. So it's nothing bad.
Okay.
It's absolutely adorable. But sometimes situations like that can be um, frowned upon by administration of paras, talking to parents about something like that. Which it was a lovely interaction. We were we were having a lovely conversation about this whole thing, and it ended up that my daughter had a play date with the other child in the class, and they had an amazing time. It was it was fantastic. But it's things like that where there are things that happen in the classroom that we're just not privy to as parents. And there are other people in the classroom that are like, hey, this thing is great. Or, when you're talking about certain things that work at home that aren't working at the school. So, I mean, yes, it should come from the teacher, but sometimes
Yes.
sometimes
Yes.
it's nice to have that a little bit more of an open channel of communication. So I do understand, especially when you're talking about something that could be in a negative context. But for me, when I'm thinking about it, I'm also thinking about the positives
Okay.
and the collaboration and the ways in which, we're able to be like, oh, we're at, potty training, we're at an hour and a half right now. Uh, and certain things like that. Oh, we went potty at this time. So there is a certain amount of communication that quite frankly is necessary. Just anyway, moving on.
Well, you know what?
Um,
Can we go back? Because I
Yeah.
think that for me, when we were just talking about investigations and then we
oh
went,
yeah, no, I know.
so, and the beautiful thing about if you implement positive behavioral interventions and supports, a component of that is the communication. And it trains and you get a system in place about how communication is going to flow to the parents. And it is supposed to be based out of what's happening that's positive. And what is it, 5 to 1 or 7 to 1, seven positives to one negative, right? We're really trying to emphasize that that we are sending the good news notes, and those good news notes need to be able to be written by classified staff and not just teachers. Sometimes teachers get pulled into a variety of other things where they're not able to necessarily send those good news notes home. And so they should be trained and empowered and encouraged to hand out the coupons, the bucks when a kid is doing a good job. With PBIS, you're training cafeteria workers, the bus drivers, the campus monitors, the noon duty soups, the crosswalk traffic folks, all those individuals, including parents that volunteer on the campus, that when you see a positive behavior, we need to reinforce that behavior by recognizing it. And so, what I would say is let's lean into PBIS because it is a system that is evidence based, been validated. If you implement it with fidelity, these are the systems that and the results that you will have. And so that's where I would want to go. So there is a way to do it, making sure that everybody is trained and knowledgeable about the communication system at that school.
Okay. Um, what will you do to provide oversight of the county's charter schools and ensure that they are delivering a quality education to all enrolled students without bias or discrimination of any kind?
Well, first and foremost, making sure that all charter schools are provided supports and the resources that any other school would be receiving. And also understanding the nuances around charter schools. So there are charter schools that are dependent charter schools that are actually run by the district. And so in that instance, continuing to provide that district with all of the resources that they can provide to all of their different schools, whether they are a charter or a general school. And for our independent charters, making sure that they are invited and encouraged to participate in the professional learning opportunities that the county office provides, um, being um, partners and helping them to identify what their needs are. One of the big things that we did this past year was include all of our charter schools, worked with the county behavioral health to include all of our charter schools in our mobile crisis response program because for the past several years it's just been one charter school. There was actually two charter schools that were included in the contract with the county. So um, they were reaching out for support, saying, we have young people that are in crisis and we have the need for mental health services for our students as well. And so we were able, it took some time, but we were able to work with all of our partners in ensuring that they had access to the mental health supports that any other school, any other public school in the area receives. The other elements are, if there is we have one charter school that is um, approved by and overseen by the County Office of Education, and ensuring that we are being compliant with the regulations and with the expectations as the entity that approved the original charter for that school, ensuring that they are compliant with all of the different requirements that they have as a school, and providing them the support, but then also providing them the resources so that they are successful. Ultimately, for me, if there are young people that attend the school and it's a public school, I want to make sure that those children have access to high quality education, to all of the supports that any other student would receive. And that's what I would be ensuring.
Okay. Um, as far as I'm aware, I think there's two charter schools that are specifically homeschool charter schools. Um, Homeschooling has its own challenges. Um, do you have any additional oversight that you would want to see there? Do you have, because especially with children who are not being regularly seen by educational professionals, they can fall through the cracks. So, any thoughts on that?
One of the experiences that I had was running a K-12 independent study program in another district prior to coming to the Solano County Office of Education. And many of those families were homeschool families, faith-based. And so working with those families to understand what the state standards are and the expectations, making space so that they can incorporate some of the um, content that aligns with their families' areas of focus, but also making sure that we are holding firm to um, the student having access to the state standards and all of the curriculum that every other student would. And then also just understanding the responsibility that, like, if your child is only coming to see a teacher once a week, for an hour or two and just minimal amount of time in front of an instructor, then you parent, you're the one that is, in essence, the teacher, making sure that your child is up and ready and has a quiet place to do their work. And I was actually able to counsel some families into, let's work with the school that your child attends and work around some of the challenges that is bringing you to want to come to this independent study program. Once I outlined all of the different things that that parent would be responsible for. And, and in certain cases, when there's, a single parent or two parents that are working all the time, it's who's going to be ensuring that your child is doing the work, is focused on the things that they need to be focused on, and is receiving the support that they need to be successful. And, once we've had that conversation, we did have a number of families where we were able to go back and work on the relationship with the school, and or provide additional wraparound supports for that student within that school to keep them there. And we also have other families that, for whatever reason, that's just what they want to do, and that's their right to be able to do it. California Ed Code allows for it. And so one of the things that I would want to do is make sure that we reach out to, support, provide opportunities for those teachers to receive the training. Because if you're only working with a student for an hour, that can be a challenge. You have to have specific skills and you need to know how to track those students throughout the day. The Solano County Office of Education has an independent study program. Now, this one is for students that are middle or high school, mostly high school students, I believe. And there's technology that's used to see how long the student was logged into the system, and additional supports and checks throughout the week to make sure that, students are turning in assignments, that if they missed a week, there's communication and outreach, to see what's going on and to work to get that student back into school, and back on track. But it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, and it requires a lot of oversight and a lot of support for the student and the parent and the teacher.
Yep. Well, we are coming up on an hour. So how about you go ahead? I know, right? How about you go ahead and give us your closing statement? Thank you so much.
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, and I appreciated the questions. They were tough questions. You had me really thinking. And what I want to say in closing is that I truly love this community, all of our communities in Solano County, and I'm a dedicated educator, 26 years of experience, and I'm a mom. I am an individual who is that person who wants to see change happen. Because if we look at our outcomes, if we actually look at the data around, and the data just came out recently around how students are doing academically, and the student groups that are not performing, we are not necessarily trending in the right direction. And in those areas that where we are trending in the right direction, it's very, very slow, slow growth. And our young people are coming out of the pandemic. There are definitely gaps in knowledge that we are finding because of them being out of school, for over a year, nearly 2 years. And emotionally, socially, academically, there's still supports that these young people need to be successful. We can't continue to do the exact same thing and expect different results with our young people. And we need to have leaders that are willing to take a critical look at what we're doing and what our outcomes are, and be bold enough to implement some of the changes that need to be made. And change is hard, but articulating where we're going, what the expectation is for all students, where we want to see our community grow. And the big thing that I see that I want to incorporate more of is community. At our county office of education meetings, most of the time there's no one there. Um, had the pleasure for the past 6 months of being a trustee for the Fairfield Sassoon School Board. And it's it's a much larger organization, but even then, not always well attended. So, really looking at what are we doing? How do we incorporate um, parent voice, engagement, participation in board meetings and other meetings? Do we need to change the way that we are offering those opportunities so that we can maximize participation, but really valuing what parents and what the community is saying, what our staff are saying at all levels, what their thoughts are, and then utilizing that information to design strategies, to design programs and services that best suit the needs of our students. In the end, I want to see every single student graduate, 100% graduation rates. I want to see every student performing at their highest level and being able to reach whatever goals they have set for themselves. And I also want to make sure that our young people are living in a community where their basic needs are met, where they feel safe, where they feel supported. And if we look at some of the data, our young people, we have survey data, the California Healthy Kids surveys. We have a lot of data that shows that our young people are saying that they're not receiving, they are not getting what they need to get to where they are trying to go. And so my goal will be to make sure that we have a variety of different ways to get there. So I think of equifinality. Where are we going? There's multiple opportunities. There's multiple ways to get to a final destination, and we need to have multiple voices in designing the systems to get there. And I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you so much.